Right, and part of the reason they kind of solved some of their problems of isolation and poor management and political class that had grown quite stale and ineffective was by being very active in their trade with the European Union, what became the European Union. So the more that they engaged in trade with the EU, the more robust the United Kingdom economy became. And they were also able to keep the British pound, which was quite a neat trick, which gave them another cute little way to maneuver some GDP growth. But since leaving the EU now, they don't have that buffer anymore. So they're on their own, and the inflation is raging, and there's very little the central bank can do, the Bank of England. And like I said 5 years ago, I would not be surprised, and I will not be surprised when it happens, that the United Kingdom will once again need a bailout. As far as the bond market goes, you have a problem of convexity where there's just too much debt out there, and the maturity on that debt is extended out toward further reaches of the yield curve, which means that the central bank is less able to manage the financial problems of the United Kingdom and other countries as well. So I think it'll be a lot worse this time than in 1976. Oh, absolutely. The White House and the Feds are entrapping these representatives with these fraudulent loans as a way to coerce them and to censor them. So they're no longer ability to represent the constituents who voted for them have been neutered. So there is no representative democracy in the United States. You have the feds that are corrupt and trading on inside information, as we now know, with like Nancy Pelosi and others, who are out there essentially entrapping congressmen and senators with these fake and fraudulent PPP loans, and then using that to silence them when they attempt to stop and voice opposition to programs from the federal government that are enriching the kleptocracy in America. Let's be clear. America has become a kleptocracy. It's become an oligarchy. So you have oligarchs in the United States, like, for example, when the fall of the Soviet Union happened, there was a rise of oligarchs. Here in America, with the life expectancy down, infant mortality up, paper money printing going berserk, you have a rise of an oligarchy in America, and it's becoming pernicious, ugly, and causing incredible dislocation and anxiety. The congressmen and senators in America have become paid influencers by the ultimate shitcoin, the U.S. dollar.
Yes.
So the U.S. dollar is the printing press, just like any of the shitcoins can print billions of tokens, and they give them to the influencers who go on the TV to push their propaganda. And if they balk, they say, oh, you took that money, and now we're going to expose you. And they manipulate the situation accordingly. So the part of the branch, the judiciary, is failed. It's gone. It's fallen. The executive branch has also now fallen because the top executive, the president, is clearly without mental capacities to do that job. So you have the judiciary and the executive are now dead. Over there at the Supreme Court, they recently had a leak where one Supreme Court justice was leaking on another Supreme Court justice. So I would posit that also indicates that that third branch of government is now also dead. So what's left? The fourth branch, as Thomas Jefferson called it, of the press, the free press, that's also been deadened. They're unable to speak freely. Free speech is dead. So where's the life? The dollar is soaring against other fiat currencies, but we can tell from inflation numbers that all fiat currencies are in fact collectively tumbling. The death of the dollar has been predicted for decades, but are we finally in the last days of fiat? Lawrence, on February 26th, we froze $600 billion in Russian reserves. Is this kind of the end game? I mean, does China look at this and say, oh boy, our money can be stolen at any time by the U.S.? Where do you see it going from here? So, Lawrence, hundreds of billions of dollars of student debts were just written off. Well, of course, it was just transferred to the taxpayer. I mean, this is essentially moral hazard gone berserk, right? Because why would anyone assume that they would ever have to pay their debts off ever again? Speaking of energy, when I look at these energy charts, they don't look like they're just rising due to inflation, and they look absolutely nonsensical. They've gapped open to unheard of historical prices. I mean, it looks crazy, Lawrence. What's going on? Let's look at, you mentioned quantitative easing there. And the big picture is that you've got central banks that have been quantitatively easing for an extended period of time. As you point out, now they're tightening, the quantitative tightening. It's kind of a sudden shock to the system. But in fact, we're at a point where it's going to become clear, Lawrence, I'm curious what you think about this, that there is no real way to get inflation rate, as you're talking about there, back to 2.6%, as is indicated by the 5-year swap market, without quantitative easing kicking in a big way and crashing the economy. That's the only way you can get inflation down. But I have a feeling what you're suggesting is that that's really not going to happen. There's no political will for it. And we're going to have a return to a massive money printing. Lawrence, what do you think? Right, I think I read that exact phrase. That's a rarely used economic phrase in Jerome Powell's testimony. Look, I call it the Bermuda Triangle economy, where you're flying through the economy and all of your instruments are spinning in opposite directions. And of course, it's a recipe for a total failure and crash. Lawrence Lepard, thanks for being on Max and Stacy Report. Always great to have you on.